wonderful episode of Mind Over Masculinity, the podcast where strong men learn that strength is not about grinding through the pain, but it's all about listening to your body, leading with clarity, and living with courage. I'm your host, Avik, and today we are talking about something deceptively small with shockingly big ripple effects like upper cervical care, tiny precise adjustments at the top of the spine that can change the way your entire nervous system performs. So, if you are a founder, a leader, a dad, or a man who's quietly shouldering the word while ignoring the headaches, the vertigo, the brain fog, the insomnia, then this conversation is for you. And our guest today, please welcome the listeners, Dr. Ray Drury. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Ray.
Thank you, Avik. I appreciate you having me on.
Amazing. And dear listeners, before we delve deep into the discussion, I'd love to introduce you quickly with Dr. Ray. So, Dr. Ray has spent 3 decades helping people reclaim their lives without the meds or the surgery. Yeah. So, he's seen men go from just push through it to I didn't know life could feel like this clear. Today, we will unpack this science, the stories, and the mental health upside of getting your head literally back to straight. So, I'll not take much of your time to listen. Let's get started. Welcome to the show again, Dr. Ray. So, Dr. Ray, a lot of men wear the pain like armor, headaches, tight jaws, stiff necks, foggy focus, but call it very normal.
Mhm.
So, from your lens, how can a misalignment, like high in the neck, silently keep the nervous system in a stress loop? What do you think?
Yeah, so most people don't realize, but the central nervous system controls every function in the body, right?
Okay.
The brain sends all the messages from the head down through the brainstem down the spinal cord. Then it goes out, controls your heart rate, your blood pressure, your digestion, your immune system, how you sleep, your energy, even how the brain works. Well, the brainstem is like I'm an older guy, so the switchboard operator, it's like sends the message from the brain to the kidneys, from the brain to the heart, right? Well, it all goes through the top two bones in the neck. And that's the only place where you can have a interference in that normal transmission between the brain and the body. And if that happens, then a lot of these symptoms can result.
Exactly. So, what will be the one simple self check a man can do at home to suspect an upper cervical issue before it becomes a crisis?
So let me give you a little more detail first, and then I'll explain to you a little home test you can actually do to kind of check yourself. So there's two things that happen. Okay. So if one of the top two bones in the upper neck get out of alignment, one, it'll close down on the opening. Okay. That where the brainstem goes through. That can put
Mhm.
direct pressure on the brainstem. It takes less than the amount of pressure it takes for you to touch the back of your hand and feel something touch the back of your hand can cut the flow through the nerve to 50%. So we're not talking
Mm.
some major, trauma. It could have been a bump to the head, a slip, a fall. That can interfere with the messages from your brain to any part of the body. And anywhere they go, if they don't get the full message from the brain, they don't work the way they're designed. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as a result, the other thing that happens, the head sits on top of the top two bones. So anywhere those top two bones go, the head goes. It doesn't have any choice because it just sits right on top. Well, your brain is designed to be level. It has its own reflex. It's called the righting
Mm.
reflex. And the whole purpose of that reflex is to make sure the brain stays balanced parallel to the ground. Well, if the bone moves out of position, it will take the head, which will throw the brain off balance. So the brain, trying to get itself level, will then force the rest of the body to compensate. So it might force you to lower one shoulder, raise one hip, but the whole spine and skeletal system will contort itself in an attempt to level the brain. So now you end up with asymmetry throughout your body, right?
Yeah.
If one side will have to stretch while the other side contracts, and it will twist the body. So
Mm.
there's a test that we can tell people they can do at home to check to see if maybe one of the bones in the upper neck is a little bit out of position. So,
Mm.
you want me to walk you through that test real quick?
Sure.
Okay. So the easiest way to do it, so that writing reflex, it depends on on your ears, your eyes, and mechanoreceptors in the head and neck to make sure that the brain stays balanced. So what you do is you first close your eyes, which takes your eyes out of the picture. And then you're going to slowly turn your head to one direction as far as you can, then go over to the other direction as far as you can. Then you're going to come right back to what feels like center. And as soon as you open your eyes, step backwards. You need to be in front of a mirror. You've got to be able to see your own posture is what you're looking for. So as soon as you get back to center and you're in front of that mirror, you open your eyes. And the first thing I want you to look at are your earlobes. Does it look like one ear may be a little higher than the other? If then immediately drop down to your shoulders. Does it look like one shoulder may be a little bit lower than the other shoulder? Then come back up and look at the nose and look and see if it looks like your nose may be a little turned left or a little more turned to the right. Those are all, if you have any of those signs, those are all indicators that one of the upper bones in the neck isn't positioned properly. And as a result, your posture has altered itself. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yep. So, I mean, definitely, I love that because you're saying that I am fine. The posture can be neurological tax, and naming it turns kind of bravado into the actual leadership over our own bodies. So,
Mhm.
okay. And about the micro adjustment, right? Like, you make small adjustments that claim big results, like the better sleep, fewer migraines, calmer mood. I mean,
Yes.
mechanically, yeah, yeah. Like mechanically, how does a kind of millimeter shift up uh, top translates into the mental clarity and the emotional steadiness? I mean, what do you have to say?
So, that's probably the most incredible thing about the reactions we see.
Okay.
It's actually what got me into this work. When I was in chiropractic school, I was injured and had all of a sudden, like, my I wasn't sleeping well. I'll give you just a little bit of exactly everything that was going on with me. I had this chronic metal taste in my mouth for probably 6 months. Every time I would brush my teeth, I'd spit blood. This was 6 months. I wasn't sleeping. I'm chronically fatigued. I had crazy brain fog, and I got stupid or dumb, I guess. I was studying for hours, and then I would get up and walk away and come back, and I couldn't remember anything. My grades started going downhill real bad. I met a guy who did upper cervical work an hour and a half away. I drove, I saw him, started getting checked, started getting adjusted. But the very first adjustment when I came home, hour and a half later, when right as I pulled into the driveway, I had this cold sweat hit me, this wave of nausea. As I started walking towards my house, I had no control over it, just projectile vomited all over the front porch. I walked in the house, rinsed my mouth out, laid down in the bed, fully dressed, lights on. About 10 o'clock, woke up 10 o'clock the next morning. 12 hours, lights fully on. I mean, I didn't plan on going to sleep. I just laid down because I didn't feel good, but it knocked me out. I slept literally 12 hours, got up, brushed my teeth, and no blood. Overnight, my gums had healed. Well, what I noticed over the next several days, weeks, was that my brain started to change. All of a sudden, that brain fog clear. My studying, I had to study less and retained much, much more, and so it made my brain work better. So I started to research it a little bit. I'm like, how is this possible that one of the bones in the upper neck? Of course, I'm in chiropractic school, so I was taking some neuroanatomy classes, and I started reading a little bit ahead on the brainstem and its relationship to the brain. So it turns out that every thought, memory, emotion, even your conscious awareness that happens in the brain, it actually channels through the brain stem. So, like if you have a thought, a memory, let's say an emotion, right? It starts off in one part of the brain, it travels to the brain stem, then from the brain stem to another part of the brain that then interprets that message. Well, if there's a bone in the upper part of the neck that's out of a line, like stepping on a garden hose, it can change the message before it gets to the other part of the brain. So it alters the message or dilutes it or changes it somehow, which makes the brain not work like it should. It doesn't, it's not a clear message. It could change the emotion altogether, right? It could change your thoughts, your memories. And so by keeping that open, ensures the brain functions to its fullest potential. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
Eh, and you asked about sleep. It turns out that this
Mm.
sleep center,
Yeah.
which is responsible for shutting the brain down from back to front through all four stages, getting you into deep sleep, which is where the body heals,
Mm.
is in the heart of the brainstem. So it doesn't take much interference at the top of the neck to alter that sleep system. Matter of fact, over 50% of the patients that come into me don't sleep well. You know, they might come into me for other things, but when we start asking questions, most of our patients don't sleep well. And that's usually one of the things that almost everyone notices, improved sleep, which affects everything.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and like so like for the data driven guys, right? What changes do the patients feel within the kind of days versus the subtler gains that show up over the weeks?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, I'm saying like for the people who are very much into data driven, right? What changes do the patients feel within days versus over the weeks?
For people when they first start?
Yeah, for the people who
So
will start.
so typically, the first thing people notice is a lot of musculoskeletal changes. You know, as soon as we reposition the head, it start working its way down, like headaches are almost direct cause effect, right? Headaches, migraines, within the first 2 or 3 visits, usually those are pretty well gone, okay? 'Cause
Mm.
we've taken any pressure that could create a headache. Then people notice neck pain, back pain, range of motion improves almost immediately. So a lot of the musculoskeletal stuff is usually what we notice right off the bat, and then with time, then, you know, when the body starts resting better, you start sleeping better. You know, most healing takes place when you're in deep sleep. So as your sleeping improves, then you notice, you know, people, you know, their energy gets better, digestion gets better, immune system gets stronger, more deeper stuff, even things like anxiety, depression, panic attacks, that usually comes along, you know, as the body rests better. And so usually by within, you know, within a few weeks, you start to notice more deeper layer healing.
That makes sense. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that timeline helps obviously like men like the scoreboards like as you mentioned the sleep quality, headache frequency, reaction time, it all
Mhm.
turns healing into progress when we actually track. So uh, I can relate. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And you know this word is very very common these days, and somehow we feel like it's a kind of badge of honor, like burnout, right? And um I mean, entrepreneurs often chase relief with caffeine, painkillers, or the willpower. So, how does the upper cervical care complement the therapy, like the breath work or like training to pull someone out of that chronic fight or flight?
Out of chronic what?
Chronic fight or flight.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding you. My speaker's not real.
Fight, fight, or flight.
Oh, fight or flight. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
sympathetic. So that's the, you know, sympathetic versus parasympathetic. A lot of times there's an imbalance there. And that's the that's the, you know, the entire nerve system. And there's that imbalance, you know, it's like vagus nerve versus the central nervous system, and so if there's pressure in the upper neck, it creates usually like an overexcitation. So if the parasympathetic's kicking in overdrive, the fight or flight's, heart rate's up, you're not sleeping well, the brain doesn't shut down. And a lot of times that's his interference, and the vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve, comes off of the brainstem. And so if that gets overexcited, then there's an imbalance, and you have to have homeostasis. There has to be a balance there. Otherwise, you, like you're saying, you're always in one or the other. And there's also, it's just as bad to be, very much in the opposite, in the parasympathetic side, where you're just very lethargic and you don't want to go and you don't want to run. You don't, your brain's always like, let's take a break. Is it can be just as bad for the versus those that are like, can't shut down and can't slow down. And
Mm.
so you have to, the whole entire nerve system, really the brainstem. If you look at embryology, where the sperm meets the egg, that's literally the brainstem. Because if you watch a video of how the baby is produced, you'll see that the sperm comes into the egg, and that's the start, obviously, of the embryo. And on one end of that will sprout a brain. On the other end will sprout the spinal cord. And then from the spinal cord, you'll see little buds starting to pop off and create the organs. So that is the brainstem. So everything decussates, like the left side of the body or left side of the brain controls right side of the body, right side of the brain controls
Yeah.
left side of the body. So there's this decussation, this crossover of the nerve system, and all that's in the very heart of the brainstem. So it's really, I don't know if you've ever thought of this, but there are a lot of people that have been shot through the spinal cord, had their spinal cord cut, that survived. There's a lot of people who have been shot in the brain, and survived. No one, if you just crack the seal on the brainstem, it's immediate death. A millisecond. It's the most vital part of the whole nerve system. So that's why it is so vital. And again, at the same time, it means you don't want just anyone messing with that area. You want someone
Right.
who does this every day and knows what they're doing. But it totally affects every aspect of the nerve system.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, wow. Like, also, um, if a listener is already in therapy for the anxiety or irritability,
Mhm.
what should coordination between you and their therapist look like? What is it?
Well, so first thing you need to do is need to find a doctor near you.
Mhm.
You know, there's several they're all over the United States. There's several in Europe and different parts of Asia. If it was someone, that wanted to see me specifically, if you want to reach out to me, I'd be more than happy to try to find. I know most of the doctors that do this type of work. I would try to be happy to try to find someone near you. If not, then what I do is you come in and we sit down and we have a consultation where we get a little more background. Where did this come from? Have you ever had any traumas in the back past? How long has it been going on? You know, get a little history. Then we go through an exam. We're going to do a full body exam. We're going to check everything out. And then we're going to narrow it down to what we feel to be the ultimate cause. Huh. And we have thermography we use that we
Yeah.
can measure the body's temperature and heat. And oftentimes, if you put pressure on the nerve system, it'll leave a pattern of heat, an abnormal pattern. If we see that, then the next step is we take a series of three-dimensional X-rays to see the body, the spinal cord, the spinal column, and see how the bones are aligned. And then from there, that gives us a pretty good idea of what needs to be done to kind of correct it. And then we still use that thermal imaging again to make sure after the fact that the nerve pressure that was there is gone. As long as it is, then the brain to body communication starts to open back up and the body starts to heal.
So, I mean, uh, one thing I was thinking, like how to put that, like, I'm trying to put that contradictory angle also, right? Like about the skeptics. Um, some men hear that chiropractic and think about the placebo or maybe the quick fix, right? So, um, from that perspective, like, what's the strongest evidence, or maybe you can say uh, the most compelling case study that you have seen that would make a healthy skeptic sit upright?
Hmm. Let's see. Well,
Hmm.
you know, I don't know. I think if you understand how the body works, the nervous system runs everything. For every effect in the universe, right? For everything that happens, there's a reason, there's a cause. Okay. And one thing I can tell you with 100% certainty
Mm.
that there's never been a health condition that was the result of a drug deficiency. So
Okay.
taking a medication has never fixed any health problem ever, right? It's taking a drug. So nobody's ever had a Ambien deficiency, a Zoloft deficiency, a Vioxx deficiency, nothing. There's no drug that has the absence of a drug has ever caused a problem. So there has to be a cause, right? There has to be a reason. So you take something like migraines, for example. Okay. There's two things that happen with the migraine. For one, the brain says, I need more blood. So brain sends a message to the heart. Heart speeds up, push blood against gravity to get it up to the brain. Well, there's another mechanism that has to happen, and the blood vessels that supply the blood to the brain, they have to dilate, which means they have to open up to allow for the extra blood flow. Well, those nerves that control those blood vessels come off the brainstem, go to the blood vessels, and they will tell the blood vessels to dilate to allow for the extra blood. If that doesn't happen, then you're trying to squeeze a lot of blood through a small opening, and those blood vessels will get irritated, inflamed. That causes the pain of a migraine.
Oh.
And the lack of blood flow creates the auras, the other side effects that go with the migraine. Well, very simple for us. We just find where the pressure's at, interfering with the messages to the blood vessels, open it up. So then the blood vessels get proper blood flow. I mean, they dilate like they're supposed to allow for the proper blood flow to get to the brain, and the migraines are gone, right? They go away. So taking medication for migraines, for example, it might numb the problem, but it doesn't change anything. It just covers up the symptom. The symptom's still there. You just hopefully you don't feel it, so you don't get the pain. Well, the AMA, actually, it published in the Journal of American Medical Association just recently did a study. They found 80% of long-term migraine sufferers, 8 out of 10 will have a stroke. 8 out of 10, that's not good odds, right? If you have migraines, and that says for 10 years or more, that's what they consider long term. So what you're doing is you're basically masking a problem until it becomes a bigger problem, right? So you're covering it up, but your body doesn't get better, it's getting worse till eventually, if you think about it, if you have a lack of blood flow to the brain long enough, you're slowly starving the brain. That's a stroke, right? So that's why what you have to realize is the system, at least in America, is based off of covering up symptoms, right? You take a medication and so you don't know the problem's there, but it's still there. You just don't know it until you ultimately get sicker. So I think the thing you have to understand is look more at what's causing the problem. If you have back pain, what's causing it? If your brain doesn't work like it should, you have brain fog, you're not sleeping good, you have low energy, your digestion's not working. Why? And the one thing I guarantee you'll find is it's not because you don't have enough medicine. So now look deeper, okay? It's gotta be something inside the body. There's something going on within you, not from without. So taking something from outside in isn't gonna fix anything. It might feel better, but it's not gonna fix it because there's something going on in you. If you find out what's going on in you, correct that ultimate cause, that way then the body works like it's supposed to.
Mm.
And what that means is you're not supposed to have pain. These symptoms that everybody wants to cover up, what you have to realize is your symptoms are actually good, not bad. They're actually your body's warning sign to tell you something's wrong. So covering them up is like waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, your fire alarm's going off, right? You get up and unplug the battery, go back to bed. It doesn't change anything. You may not know the fire's there until it's too late, but the fire's still there. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was just okay. So I was just wondering on this, like uh like like you mentioned about the headaches, right? Uh so the chronic head or maybe the neck pain uh
Mhm.
doesn't just hurt. It frays the patience, spikes anger and dulls the joy. So what patterns do you see in men's relationships and the leadership once their symptoms ease?
You're gonna have to repeat that, Avik. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm saying, um, for the chronic head or pain, neck pain.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't just hurt, it frays the patience, right? And it spikes the anger as well. So what I'm asking is, what patterns do you see in men's relationship and the leadership once their symptoms ease?
I'm still having a hard time understanding exactly what you're asking.
Okay. So I'm saying like, yeah, I'm saying like, what kind of patterns do you see in men about their relationship and the leadership once this kind of symptoms, the symptoms which you are mentioning about, like the headaches, the chronic head pain or the neck pain, what kind of symptoms do you see?
Well, so of course they can't be who they really are, right? I mean, that goes with anyone.
Mhm.
I mean, you're held back by,
Mm.
your brain doesn't work right. You're not motivated. You don't have the confidence that you would have, and then that's going to hold you back in life in general, right? In your job, in your
Uh-huh.
relationships. You spend more time. You never know when those symptoms are going to come about. Also, you're less likely to participate in social events. I have a lot of people that really, they're afraid to go out because they don't know what's going to happen next, when it's going to hit them. And if they have them constantly, I have people come in every day that have a headache every single day. I've had literally even migraine patients that have a migraine every single day, just to one degree or another. Sometimes they're debilitating, sometimes they're just, just a lot of pain. And so, of course, it's gonna affect your life, it's gonna affect your relationship with your spouse, your children, and it takes away from who you are as a person because you're more wrapped up in how you feel when you ought to be out more wrapped up in living, right?
Right.
That's one of the things we say, one of the quotes we say, "Not only will we add years to your life, but life to your years," which, that's more valuable to most of us than living a long time. At least you want to live while you're here, right? Not just exist. You want to live. You want to have a productive life and enjoy it as you should.
Okay. Okay. And so any story like where a small adjustment showed up as a big shift in the decision making.
I'm sorry, Avik, one more time.
I'm saying any story you can share about the decision making.
Any story?
Yeah.
So now, from a decision making from like a patient that's trying to decide what they need to do, is that what you mean, or something that a story of people that have come in the office? What kind of what are you referring to?
I mean, I just said like any story that you have seen from maybe from your patients,
Yeah.
from your I mean, someone who visits you, right? So
Yeah.
that helped a kind of big shift in
Yeah.
the decision making.
Yeah. So, um, I had, a few years ago, I had a lady, actually, the husband called from Italy, and, she had a lot she was in a wheelchair, she's 50 years old, had cerebellar ataxia and dystonia, which is very neurologically debilitating, and,
Uh-huh.
she'd been to all the specialists in Europe, no one been able to help, and they called, and they said, "You think you can" they basically told her she had 3 months to live and told her to just take her home and let her die, and she was actually friends of some of my wife's family who's from Italy. And they called, they said, "You think you can help her?" And I said, "Well, I think we can do better than 3 months." So she came over here to Charlotte, North Carolina, where we are, and,
Uh-huh.
within a few adjustments, she was sleeping through the night, her pain disappeared, her hands opened up, she actually, by the time she left 3 months later, she was walking without a wheelchair. So when she got back to Italy, people started asking
Mhm.
questions. And so I had a call from another guy, shortly afterwards, and his daughter was 4 years old and had been injured by a vaccine and was completely paralyzed. She had spent the last 6 months in a pediatric hospital in Milan, and the medical doctors basically told her the same thing, "Just take her home to die." So he called and he said, "Hey, I heard you did some stuff. You helped this lady that came over. Is there anything you can do for my daughter?" Her name was Daphne. And I said, "We can do more than, I mean, we don't want her to just sit home and die."
Mhm.
So I said, "Bring her over and let's see what we can do." So they came over. We started adjusting her. By the time she left 3 months later, She was feeding herself. She got out of her diaper for the first time in her life. She was standing by on her own, just holding on to a chair. And like I said, she was completely paralyzed. She could blow me kisses. We fell in love with Daphne, and she's still alive today. And she's back in Italy. They're all back in Italy. But I wound up having about 17 people ultimately come here, just from people knowing other people from Italy. One guy was had multiple sclerosis, was 30 years old, was in a wheelchair. He came over. By the time he went back, 3 months, he was walking without a wheelchair, and that got the attention of his medical doctor back in Italy. Like, "What'd you do? Where'd you go?" And
Okay.
so another he had there's a friend of his who, his name was Dr. Mondolesi, Sandro Mondolesi, and he's a world-renowned researcher on multiple sclerosis. And he called me, and he said he wanted to come and visit and see what I did. And I said, "Fine, come on over." So he came over, stayed here for a couple weeks, and he started interviewing our patients and talking. And
Hmm.
and ultimately he said, "I want to prove what you see happening in your office, what you know to happen philosophically. I want to prove it scientifically." So we actually did a research study. I ended up with opening 5 offices in Italy. Long story, but we had one in Rome, and
Okay.
we saw 77 multiple sclerosis patients just over 6 weeks, and 100% of the patients improved. The number one thing that improved, 85% of them improved their cognitive abilities, how their brain worked. 85% of them had improved brain function within 6 weeks. This whole study was actually published in PubMed, and incredible study. But that just kind of gives you, it was one study, one patient led to another patient, led to another patient. And so we ended up with a bunch of people over here staying in a hotel from Italy. And that ultimately led to me opening offices in Italy. There's still a couple of them over there now, but I had five at one time. And a little hard, it's hard enough to run an office that you're in every day. It's really difficult to run one, you know, ac- across the seas in another country.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yep. So, if you could put one sentence on every man's bathroom mirror about his neck, nerves, and the mood, what
Mhm.
would it say?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
I'm saying any message you want to share with the listeners today.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I think the most important thing is, if you're not living the life that you feel like you should be, question, what are you doing now that's working? What are you doing that's not working? Right. And then look outside the box. There is a reason. God didn't put you on this world to suffer. And he certainly, he wants you to live the fullest life you can live. Whoever your God may be, it doesn't matter. But I guarantee you, they do not want you to be. They want you to live the fullest life you can. And from my perspective, health is should be number one. As long as you're healthy, people. We have a sign in our office that says, "Invest in your health today, or pay for your sickness later." And so seek that out. There's an answer, right? I promise you. There's a reason and there's a cause.
Yeah.
And if what you're doing hasn't corrected it, you're not feeling like, you're not living life to fullest potential, then seek that out. If there's anything I can do to help you find it, I'll be happy to. That's what I do. I've been doing it for 32 years. I've written a book called The Best Kept Secret in Healthcare. You can find that on Amazon. That can maybe help you get your direction. If you can't get it on Amazon, let me know. I can send you a PDF version just so you can have the information. But keep looking, there's answers there. There's reasons and there's things, you should be living at 100%, and that's in everything you do. And I know, you know, we both want everyone to live their fullest potential, and that's why you're doing the podcast. And I watched a few of your podcasts; are great, and I think there's a lot of things there that everyone can learn from, and hopefully this will be one of them.
Exactly. Exactly true. Yep. Yep. So yeah, I mean, it's very simple, repeatable, sustainable. That's how the habits become a kind of legacy and not a kind of phrase. So,
Yeah.
Dr. Ray, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the clarity,
Yes,
the
sir.
yeah, and also for the reminder that tiny and intentional changes can rewrite a man's entire day. So,
Hmm.
for every listeners who are listening right now, um, if you have normalized the headaches, fog, or tension, or just the permanent knot at the base of your skull, then don't make you pain your personality. Get evaluated, track your sleep, adjust your posture, book the appointment that you have been delaying.
Mhm.
Your family doesn't need a kind of martyr, they just need you present, calm, and clear. So, if this episode has helped, please share it with two men that you know and care about. Follow the show, leave a review, and tell us the one small adjustment that you are committing to this week. And Dr. Ray, if someone wants to connect with you, what will be the great medium to connect?
Yeah. So, you guys can find me on social media, Dr. Ray Drury, or, email me, Drury, Drury. That's my last name at Gmail. I'd be happy to help you any way I can.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, I'll put all the links into the show notes for your easy reference. And with this hope, until next time, this is Mind Over Masculinity. I'm your host, Avik, and be strong, but be smart about it. So, see you next time. Thank you so much.